Good morning. Welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I am Brigid Burke. See, Sam's got a message for me right away. And good morning. Well, good afternoon to you, Sam. And just started the Catholic episode. Oh, good. I hope you like it. I think it probably is just the tip of the iceberg on that subject, but I do hope you enjoy that. And I got your email this morning too, Sam. And yeah, I will have a response for you afterwards. Yourself and Kathleen, I have messages from both of you today, so I'm going to be a little bit longer messages, so I'm going to go log in and give a proper response. But yeah, just very happy to see that you're on, and I'm sure we've got some more people joining us. We've got this. Here's your. Here's the weather report. Probably nobody wants, but it's actually going to warm up a lot today. It's going to be about. And there's Kathleen. Good morning. I was just saying that, yeah, I got your message this morning too. So, and I know I will be speaking with you later today. So, yeah. So, like I said, that's between what I'm doing with what I'm setting up and been working with Sam, and also what I'm going to be doing for you today. That's kind of my focus today. Is those two things. Sorry for overloading you. Oh no, I'm not overloaded at all, and I'll talk to you about that. To me, that's not an overload. To me, I'm like, yeah, that's the kind of overload I can do something with, right? It's not like being overloaded with, I don't know. Think about some of the other things that we get that distract us, right? That people overload us with, and then we're just kind of like, why am I dealing with this? But no, this is all good stuff. So, so it's amazing. So yeah. So anyway, yeah, the weather report nobody wants. Yeah, it's foggy out. It snowed last night. Rain turned to rain again, which has kind of been the pattern. So it's really weird. It's going to be 53 today, which I think is like around 12, 13 in centigrade terms. But then it's also going to be then it's going to get really Arctic cold again, like the whole week. It's barely going to make freezing. So. Yeah, so we are in a very weird weather pattern here, and I'm looking forward. I'm hoping March is actually going to start looking a little more like spring, because I'm just kind of bored with winter at this point. It's pretty normal at this time of year. Okay, so now that we've got the weather report out of the way, I will get on to what I was going to talk about today. So it's interesting. I was thinking, and it's funny that Sam in her email brought up the Morrigan to me this morning, and which is, if anybody, okay, people who are new and don't know, I have basically two main guides, and my two main guides are the Morrigan and Archangel Azrael, which seems kind of weird for a lot of people. They're like, why those two? They don't even seem like they're from the same system. But there are connections there that would take a long time to explain. But yeah, but those two are connected, and I had quite a few messages from them this morning. But I was thinking about my book, The Morrigan Timelines, and I was thinking about the second half of the book. And I know Kathleen's read that book, and there's been a few other people who have too. I don't know everybody who's read it and what everybody has thought of it. But I have the second half of the book. There's like the same character who her name is Layla, but she's got the personality of the Morrigan, as the Morrigan presents herself to me. And there's kind of like two sides to that personality, and they're two very different sides. One is very one is a very outward, open, I don't know, I guess very sexualized. I mean, she's very very sort of almost aggressive in that way. Then there's another side of her that is just almost completely the opposite. One that is actually just completely, I think if we were talking about sun goddesses withdrawing into the cave, it's almost like, nope. I mean, she's doing things, but she's kind of operating completely in this like rational masculine sphere. She deals in the sciences only. And a lot of it has to do with masculine betrayals, actually. And there's something, even though the story is fiction, there's something about the idea of masculine betrayal there, which is a theme. Now, the ISFM, my school, this term, the focus is going to be masculine and feminine integration, because we have a theme every semester. And the instructors are all, working around that theme. And I think the thing about masculine feminine integration here is that yeah, it's trying to understand. Certainly, there has been no understanding of the feminine because it's been largely dismissed, and I feel like the second half of that book deals with the idea of a feminine that is largely dismissed. But the reason that it's dismissed too, what the character does to deal with this, what she feels is like an abandonment, like, okay, I'm on my own and I've got to figure this out. When really, and there's really no reason for it. I mean, that's kind of the thing. There's not a good reason, or the reason has more to do with what the masculine's trying to pretend it's not doing, right? And trying to kind of project it or blame it on the feminine. So the second half of that book definitely gets into some very deep emotions around that. But what I was thinking about was the whole idea of work, because we have been talking a lot about work. We've been talking about Earth energy, Virgo energy, Capricorn energy, even Taurus energy, if you want to talk about that. There's this idea of, this kind of like this slow plodding along, going out, doing the work, doing the things you need to do. And good morning, Suda. Good to see you. I was good to see you yesterday too. Suda was in my class yesterday morning. So we're just talking about, I'm just talking about the idea of work, and I'm talking about it with respect to the story that I had written. And in the Morgan timelines, yeah, this is a woman who is like hyper dedicated to her work. Like, she doesn't do anything else. And of course, if you know the book and the character, she's not a normal person anyway, but she's it's almost like the work becomes the fixation, and everything that would be involved with leisure, anything around that, is just blocked out, because all of those kinds of things lead back to the betrayal of the masculine, which she doesn't want to focus on. And that kind of gets to the point. The class was great, learned a lot. Okay, good. I'm glad that was helpful. We will be having another one next month, so that's good. I'm always glad when people can join in, and if you get something out of it. So what I was thinking about with the work, though, is that a lot of times for people, when we live in a society where it's kind of like work. And it doesn't matter. We're not just talking about like hard physical labor. We're talking about people who, it's like, well, I've got to work 80 hours in the office, or I've got to, they go on, and I had posted something yesterday. I think Cindy Keza had posted it, the psychic medium, but she had posted this thing that just talked about how when people have a hard time relaxing, okay, when people go on holiday and they can't, they can't get away from the office email, or they can't, that a lot of times it's that people, they were talking about it as being a kind of guilt. Like, if you're not being productive, then, you have no right to be sitting around doing nothing. Like there's that element of, of restlessness. Like, I have to be producing something all the time. This idea that we are just machines that have to be continually producing. Like, you can't shut the machine off, or maybe it's not going to work the next time you start it up, right? I mean, and that's this is a lot of my problem with people using the machine as a metaphor for the person. I'm like, it's the other way around. Machines are meant to emulate things that people do, but they're not people. So in any case, I was thinking about this idea of work, and but because I said, I think people who can't stop working, I was reminded again of this second half of the story. And I said, I think sometimes when people can't stop working, sometimes that's also a way of blocking the world out. If you just, and now again, I'm not saying that means it's bad to be focused on what you're doing. Certainly we've been having it in our messages, like, hey, focus on your work. Don't focus on the anxiety around you. Kind of like just continue on. But the thing is, that other stuff is still in the background. And I think when it comes to relationship, you see a lot these days, particularly with women, where there's this thing of, there's a whole thing around sovereignty, and that's where the Morrigan comes in. It's this idea of, I need to exist independently. I need to be me. I need to, I'm going to make my own life without a partner, because that's a waste of time. And if you've ever been through a divorce, you kind of know how that feels. And maybe even if you haven't, I don't know. But there's always this thing of trying to connect with one's partner, and even in like a marriage situation, it can be very, very difficult. even with the best of intentions, even with love there, it can be, if you're talking about people who are almost like coming from two different dimensions in the way that they think about things, it can be very hard to have a real conversation or connection about certain things, especially if there's a crisis, especially if I find that men and women are kind of geared towards managing those their emotions and their feelings about things in different ways. Men would be more likely to kind of just keep it back and kind of go, oh well, okay, oh well, or they would just lose themselves in something else, watching sports, doing something other than dealing with it. And if they have a female in the house who says, hey, let's talk about this, they're like, no, I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to think about this. I don't want to talk about it. Right. Or they just try to rationalize it away and say, well, come up with a solution or we're not talking about it. Like, it's more, like I said, it's a very active kind of energy. Like, well, like, in other words, if we're talking about it, then it has been something I have to fix. There's that kind of an energy to it. And if somebody, you'll hear that a lot with women in conversation, where they will say, you're just trying, how did you have a bad day and you're just trying to talk it through. And then you have the man over there who would say, like, well, why didn't you just do this? Why didn't you? And you're just like, stop telling me what I should have done. That's not what I'm here for. I'm just trying to talk to you about it. Right. It's the whole idea of listening and not trying to interpret and not trying to fix. And so, I mean, again, this is just the point being, I mean, there are cases where people can get so wrapped up in the emotions and never get to a solution. And so there's that issue as well. These things are all on a spectrum. It's not like one thing is good and one thing is bad. But oftentimes that creates a disconnect. Like, when somebody just wants somebody to listen, sometimes they feel like, well, I don't know why you're doing it this way. You could have done this. You could have done that. And that just makes them feel more like, well, okay, I was stupid and didn't handle it right, and now I feel dumb. Like, I mean, you can get into that. Good morning, Alistair. So yeah, so I don't know. So there's a lot of, the point being is that, men can get frustrated with the fact that there's the emotional thing, and they're like, I don't know what to do with this. Women can get very frustrated because they're like, I'm not looking for you to fix it. I'm just looking for you to listen or to feel or to empathize. And it's just kind of like, well, what do you want me to do? Like, that becomes the thing. What do you want me to do? So it's a difficult thing. And I think when people, and it can go either way, truthfully, it can go for men or for women. But if you kind of are in the space where you just like, okay, you know what, I'm not dealing with relationship at all. And that's a pretty common thing when people first have a very significant breakup, like if they are divorced, or and depending on how, even if the divorce was amicable, okay, you can go through a period of time. Well, you either have people, I remember when my nephew got divorced, it was like he was engaged again within 3 months. And I remember my mom saying, she was like, well, nothing like getting back on the horse after you fall off, and which I thought was hilarious. But it's, but for me, I'd be like, I think a lot of times women do this too. They're like, no, I want some time. I want some space. I want to think about this. I don't want to just jump into another relationship. Now, mind you, in my nephew's case, this was somebody who was a friends with and somebody he worked with. And so this was it was kind of the thing. And then once the other relationship was done, this one just kind of picked up in a way that it was, that it finally became a romantic relationship. It was like the feelings were there, but they had not really crossed that line because of the marriage. And then finally it was like, okay, now we can, now that's done. So it's not like, oh, he just met somebody and then decided to get married 3 months later. So I just don't want to give that impression. But how that kind of thing works, nobody ever knows. Connection is one of those things that, if we're talking about what's in our control, the way other people behave is not in our control. We can't, like, if we feel something for somebody and they don't respond to that, or they don't do something, or they don't want to be involved, then you can't make somebody, you know what I mean? I was talking with somebody recently about, the kinds of love spells and things that people do. And I know I've talked about this on other live streams, like particularly over on Katonia, where people, we just had Valentine's Day, the perennial question, well, do love spells work? And the short answer is no, they don't. They only work if the person, they might work if the person already has an interest. So another, I remember Lon Milo Duquette, who is he's very well known in philemic circles and in the OTO and stuff. He's not, there's no secret about that. He's and he, very, very, very involved in teaching magic and stuff like that. And he had said, I remember I had a class with him once on where he was talking about Goetia, about the kind of, in the sense of the demonic realm and stuff like that. He was just talking about that. He has this great book called Low Magic, and I actually recommend that book to almost anybody, because it's written in a very, very casual kind of style, and it's not there to teach anybody how to do this, but it's talking about his experience when he was like young, and when he thought he needed to do this, and what came out of it. But it's absolutely hilarious, because he's a very funny writer. But he had talked about, he said, he says, when somebody wants to invoke a demon or something for a purpose, he says, really what you're saying when you're doing that is that that's a quality or a weakness of yours, that it's something you don't have. Like his example was, oh, if you want to cast a love spell to make Susie next door fall in love with you, he says, well, all you're saying is that I'm not the type of person Susie would be interested in. So I have to use some other kinds of means to make her feel that way. He says, and by the way, there's no demon that will do that. But he was like, yeah, it's interesting. It's just this idea of how we connect with people. The point being is that love is not something that we have control over. It either kind of happens or it doesn't. That connection happens or it doesn't. And love is not the only kind of connection. I mean, there's friendly connections, right? I have lots of friends, who are male, will probably never cross the line into anything that would be other than that. And so, so there's always this line and this tension. But so, I mean, there are other ways of engaging. We don't have to, but it's interesting though, because a lot of times people will assume that there has to be a romantic or sexual connection. Like if you're talking to a man, then therefore, then that means you're involved, or you're trying to be involved, or, and that isn't necessarily the case. But that's kind of the perception. Or if you happen to be somewhere in a conversation with a man, they may assume like you're flirting with them, and it's like, no, I'm just talking to you because you're a human being and you're here, and I'm just talking to another human being. And I talk to human beings because I don't feel like I have to sit there and hide my head just because we don't have the same biological organs. So it's weird to me. I'm like, we're all just people, right? But that's a lot of times unconsciously, that's not how it's perceived. So there's all these complications in this masculine feminine connection thing. Now this gets back to the idea of work, because work can be a thing, and like I said, it can happen on either side of the equation. In this story, it's the woman who's doing it, but it can be a man who does it just as easily, where somebody buries themselves in their work. And you might think that person's exhausted. They're working so hard. They really need to take a break. The problem is oftentimes that person does not want to take a break, because taking a break means if you have that moment of pause, if you have that empty space, right? We've been talking a lot about empty spaces recently. When you're in the empty space, that's when all the stuff that the work kind of creates a wall against starts to come in, right? So that's when, in the case of this character, who mind you is actually kind of representing an extreme. I don't know that this is quite that extreme with people, but she has a situation or a trauma that is so horrible that she literally works. She doesn't even want to sleep because she doesn't want to dream about it either. It's just, everything is just fixated on, and if anybody tries to ask her anything about, her family, her personal, I just like, no, that just don't even go there. And she can't tolerate even hearing it. Doesn't want to watch, doesn't watch TV, doesn't listen to music, doesn't do anything, because everything in some way will go back and remind her about what she's lost. And you can feel this way about a lot of things. I often wonder if that's the reason that, I don't know. I don't think it's entirely the reason. I'm not a fan of love songs. Okay. I'm not a fan of ballads, especially if they're whiny ballads that are kind of like, oh, I know I cheated on me with 5 million people, but you're the one I really love and I want to come back to you. And I literally just want to take the singer and just, grab him by the throat and just be like, just stop, because it's just so annoying. Weirdly, not because that's a whole lot of my personal experience with men, but just because I just find it like, yeah, like, you didn't give a crap, and now all of a sudden when you don't have it, now you're like trying to control. Yeah, great, And you're acting like you're the victim of it. I'm just like, just stop, you know? I don't know. I'm not a fan of that kind of a thing. And I've had long conversations with people about this because some people really love that kind of stuff. They're like, oh no, it conveys a really deep emotion and so forth. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know how deep it is, but it sounds, it's the reason I think I was talking a lot about what singers I like what love songs I like. And a lot of things that people like, you know, sung by these divas, like your Whitney Houston type voice, or your Mariah Carey type voice, or even Celine Dion when she could still sing. I mean, all this, I hate all, I mean, Whitney Houston, I guess I have some attachment to because from childhood to a little bit, but the rest of them, I'm just like, no, I can't even tolerate the sound of her voice because there's just something about it. Like there's like a drama to it that I'm just like, oh, I don't know. I always like want a barrier to it. But again, so, you know, but again, for me, I just feel like it's because, in my opinion, I don't feel it's an authentic expression of emotion. I feel it's just high drama. But that's just me. I'm not knocking anybody else who has a different opinion. But this is the thing. I just, you can become, after a while, you kind of come into your own bubble and you just figure everybody on the outside is somebody who's untrustworthy in that way. So you just say, I'm just going to focus on me. I'm just going to focus on my work. And I'm going to push all this other stuff to the side. The problem with doing that, always a problem with pushing stuff to the side, is that it's going to come around and come back in some form. It's going to be there. And it can leave you very unconsciously. It can leave you, okay, with a low-level depression. I've seen that happen in people where you can be like a low-level depression that's there all the time, where, you know, you basically, people are functional and they get on with their lives and it's okay. But there's always kind of that sense there. Like there's a sense, it becomes a sense of like somebody wants a connection and at the same time, they don't want any connection. You know, it's like, yeah, no, at the same time. And that becomes a difficult thing to resolve because the only way to resolve that is to go back to the thing that you don't want to look at. Okay. And that can be a very, very hard thing because if you have experiences, this goes back to what I said about, I said that the two cards that really seem to represent human, the main things that cause us anxiety, depression, grief, suffering can be represented by the Three of Swords and the Five of Pentacles. Okay. And the Five of Pentacles has more to do with not having enough materially. Okay. Because it shows, you know, two people in poverty, kind of sick, walking in the snow outside the church, which has the Five Pentacles in the window. And then you also got the Three of Swords, which is, again, I'm talking about the Rider-Waite images, but, you know, they've got the three swords through the heart. So you're dealing with loss and you're dealing with, you know, poverty. That those two things seem to be the big thing. Poverty can be a type of loss. There's an interconnection between those because people will also talk about the Five of Pentacles as like a ghosting card. Sometimes when we're talking about a relationship, if the Five of Pentacles comes up in connection to a relationship, it's basically saying this is not an emotionally satisfying relationship. Okay, like it's even if there's an interest there, even if there is something, there's something in the way, something that makes somebody feel like they're on the outside in the cold, like on the card. And the Three of Swords has, you know, it has almost a very obvious reference to that. Although the Three of Swords also has the implication that the storm will clear and that, you know, one can move past it. But those are the two things. So when you have been in a space where you feel on the outside, whether you're talking about a social group, whether you're talking about somebody maybe who you've been interested in who hasn't shared the same interest, and maybe, yeah, and that goes different ways. You can have somebody who outright rejects somebody. You can have somebody who plays around with the person because they like the attention and in the end never has any intention of doing anything. I mean, you have all these different things that can occur in these kind of interpersonal relationships. But I feel like it's, you know, there's always this sense, I think everybody has a certain experience of that in some form. Now, if it's not in a love relationship, I'm surprised actually at how many of my students, because I do a section on love mythology, and I always ask questions that I'm not asking them to get deeply personal about anything. I'm like, but have you had an experience of falling in love? And sometimes they will tell me about it. I'm like, you don't have to get into any details, just yeah or no, if you have or haven't. And a lot of them have said no. I don't think I've ever fallen in love. And you're talking about people like in their early 20s. And that's, or like between 18 and 20. And I find that really interesting. I'm like, okay. Or do you have a different definition of love? It's like, well, I felt something, but I don't regard that as love, right? What is all that? But yeah, so I don't know. So we create a lot of these barriers to connect to connection because either we see the experiences of others or we have experiences ourselves of feeling like we have been left on the outside of something. And so, and again, whether that experience comes from family, whether it comes from a lover or a relationship, whether it comes within a friendships that can happen in friendships too, then you start to feel like, like there's something wrong with you, right? So there's different responses. People can just withdraw and say, okay, well, I'm not going to put my energy out there, right? People also can get angry and just say, well, like I've known people who have had bad breakups and then been like, well, all men are scum, right? They kind of get into that mode. And there's probably men who get that way about women too. All women are this or they're that, or, depending on what their experience was. And so I don't know. I just look at all of this and again, and I'm also acknowledging that there are other types of relationships too. Obviously there are male-male relationships, female-female relationships, gender fluid relationships. I realize there's all of that too, but you're still going to have something about this dynamic of those pieces and how they fit together, because it's still going to depend on how that person has learned to respond emotionally, or how that person has learned to manage that feeling when you're feeling like you're socially on the outside in some fashion, or on the difficulties with that. And again, oftentimes it will start with that kind of barricading. You barricade yourself with work, barricade yourself with just you can put up the angry wall and send out the vibe of everybody, keep back, more than social distancing distance. And you can lose yourself in other things to the point that you're like, well, I have no interest in connecting with anybody at all. But I don't know. I mean, I feel like deep down, people they want to connect. They want to feel, if not connected to a particular person or a special person, they still want to feel connected to other people in some way. And we can create a lot of these barriers. I think this is another aspect, kind of a negative aspect of the culture that we live in, is that we can, I don't know, we treat that aspect of our life as almost an accessory. It's like, the thing that you buy to go with with Barbie, you buy Ken to go with Barbie, right? Like you buy this, it's just kind of like an accessory. A relationship is a thing you're supposed to have or that you're supposed to do. For some people, having a family is something they're supposed to do or supposed to have. Women feel that, especially I think women who probably grew up when I did may have the feeling that, oh, well, whether they want a family or not, like that's somehow the thing that you're supposed to do. Or you may have family that make you feel like that's what you're supposed to do. And it's not that people don't do both. And that, or people aren't satisfied with having families. But there's this idea about what relationships are supposed to be. What you hear a lot now, especially when we're living in a country where they're talking about we're not interested in diverse points of view. It only can be this one. That's problematic. That's something I don't think any government should be regulating. But there's the way in which we grow up with certain impressions of how we deal with it's something that's probably part of us, but that feels other than to us. Something that feels like it's our opposite, or it's the thing that we're connecting with. And frequently we're just in the dark about how to deal with any of that. That's another long rant I've gone into in other places, so I won't go into it here, about the way that we raise children to deal with these kinds of things. Because it's the kind of things that people are like, no, we need to protect kids from this, and we don't want to talk about this. because you want to keep them innocent somehow till 18. And I'm like, well, that doesn't happen. they figure stuff out if you don't tell them, and maybe they're not learning the right stuff, but we're not really taught how to be in relationship. And I feel like part of what we're trying to get rid of in work culture is the idea that work should be your life. Okay. But in trying to pull away from that, I think that can also demand that we connect with other people. I feel like I'm going in circles with this today, so apologies, but I feel like that's kind of what I'm trying to get to here, is that we have to ask ourselves when we are prioritizing a particular thing in our lives. It's not that we shouldn't prioritize it or not have an expression of our own creativity or not. But I think sometimes when they talk about getting rid of safe and unnatural routines, they're kind of like, what are the things that are keeping you from connecting? Because on some level, everybody's connected. We're all connected. We talked about that. You exist in relation to something else, and you know that something exists because you're aware of its opposite. So we know that these things exist. But I don't know. And there's been a lot of readings too, where I'm seeing people who followed this live stream for a while know that the lovers will show up a lot, or the Two of Cups. I think we got the friendliness card last week about connection. How are we connecting with others? And, we live in a society right now where people are divided by all kinds of things, politics being a huge one. But there's this massive division of, if you're not on my side, you're the enemy and I hate you. It's like, how do you, if part of the goal here is to kind of try to bring people together and to say, look, you're not going to survive as a species unless you figure out how to play nice with each other, right? Back to play, right? How do you play nice with each other? And I think what is not working is the idea that we just we talk about political correctness, right? The idea that, there's an acceptable things to say and not say, and things that, words you can use and not use. And I think a lot of people don't like that, because they feel like, on the one hand, yes, it's understood that you want to be respectful to other people and not say vile things. But on the other hand, it may be that if one of those words is an expression of something, or even if it's just trying to discuss that kind of a thing, and it's like, oh no, you're not allowed to say that word, or saying that word makes you this kind of a person or this kind of a person. It's not always the case. Sometimes, and people sometimes just have a need to vent and to express what they're really feeling. If you kind of try to paper over it, it doesn't, you don't really get to the meat of the issue. But we're kind of trained to kind of keep things superficial, to always be polite, to not want to say or do anything that's going to step on somebody's toes, right? There's all this kind of dancing around. Women especially, I think, do this, but men probably do it to some degree as well. Or it's something like, okay, I don't know what that's about, so I'm just going to smile and nod and not say anything else about it. I don't know. I was reminded of Dave Barry, humor columnist. He had his Dave Barry's Guide to Guys, and it's a very, very funny book. But he had this whole fiction. He was trying to explain how men and women see things in relationships, and he had this fictional conversation between a couple, Roger and Elaine, right? And he said, Roger and Elaine, they have a date. They go out. They have a nice time, and they're sitting there in Roger's car, and she says out loud, "Wow, you realize we've been going out for 6 months?" Then silence. And then he goes into how they both interpret the silence, which is absolutely hilarious. She's sitting there going, "Oh my God, I said the wrong thing." Look at him. Because now he kind of is making this face. And she's thinking well, I've upset him. And then she's going on this whole thing about, maybe I've had the wrong fantasy about him. In the meantime, what he's doing is going, 6 months. Was that the last time I had an oil change? Yeah, I think, and you know what? And the guy did this last time and he really screwed me. And that's what he's thinking about. And then she suddenly blurts something out and he's like, what? He has no idea what's going on. And he'll just be like, he doesn't quite know how to answer. She'll say, "I'm sorry, I put too much on you." And he's like, "Okay, sure, yeah." He's like, I don't want to say the wrong thing right now. So it's funny. And then it ends with her spending the next 3 months going over every detail of the conversation with her friends, and him watching a tennis match between like they say, think he said 2 Czechoslovakians he's never heard of, and going, thinking something kind of went on there, but he really can't figure out what it is. And so he's not going to worry about it. So yeah, it's kind of funny. I don't know. I'm feeling like there's a whole lot going on right now around connection, especially with this Pisces North Node. I think we're kind of, yeah, let's get into our reading for today. Because I feel like the Pisces, I don't know. I feel like there's this push towards connection. And I think the way in which we even just connect on an individual level with whomever, you know, whether, like, again, whether we're talking about family, whether we're talking about friends, whether we're talking about loved ones, I think loved ones in particular is an area that can, because it is so irrational by definition. We don't fall in love because of we don't sit there and go, well, that person checks all the boxes, so now I'm going to fall in love with them. Like that's not how it works. And you know, we may fall in love with people who society considers right for us or not. You know, so yeah, it's an interesting thing, and I just find myself thinking about it from time to time. But the question then becomes, and that often get caught up in people's wounds, like in their Chiron wounds too. Whatever your Chiron wound is, that may be, that often can tie into it as well. Chiron and Libra, my God, I'm trying to imagine what that's like. But so for example, if you have Chiron and Aries, you might have a feeling like, well, I just don't, you know, people, my problem in relationships is that people feel I don't do enough for them, right? For example, or Chiron and Taurus, maybe I don't have enough money or enough security. Maybe, you know, Chiron and Gemini, I need to step back and maybe not speak up so much because maybe that sets people off. You know, there's all these kind of possibilities. Okay, our reading seems to be about this. Our central card is ordinariness. This is the 8 of Rainbows, 8 of Pentacles. And yeah, so this is a card. This is a card about work. I was literally just talking about work, right? This is about doing your work, ordinariness. Going through your day, just doing the regular stuff, which is what we, and, you know, like I said, positively, this is just, you know, that can be almost like a meditation, doing your work. Negatively, it could be a way in which we, well, I mean, I don't know. It doesn't have to be negative. It could be sometimes, though, when we are feeling a certain way, we just kind of be like, okay, I'm just going to get up and put one foot in front of the other and just go through the regular thing. At least go through the motions of the regular thing. So there's a spectrum there. But the inner feeling of which we are unaware here is the Hanged Man. Okay, this is new vision, trying to look at things differently. So I think that's the reason that this comes up. You know, we're trying to look at things in a different way. And and I kind of got that this morning. I was doing some Morrigan readings this morning, and one of the things I got in the rooms was I think it was Fehu Dagaz, and it was kind of like, yeah, your ideas and your values about things. Because Fehu usually has to do with material success, but it also has to do with, I mean, it's ruled by Venus, right? And we are about to go into Venus retrograde, which is maybe why a lot of this stuff is coming up. But there's you've got this Venus energy here, and it's almost like it's turning it upside down. You know, the Hanged Man is the one that hangs upside down, right? So you're kind of looking at it from the other side. And so internally, it's like there's an attempt to try to look at something in a new way here. All right. Externally, what we're aware of is intensity. Okay. So this is the Knight of Wands. Okay. So this is a restless energy. This is, you know, I am, you know, the fire is stoked and I am ready to do something. And again, that can mean different things for different people. Again, but remember, we got Mars retrograde in Cancer too. So this is Mars energy. And Mars retrograde in Cancer, yeah, Cancer is the area of the home, of where we feel safe, where we feel secure. It's the realm of the emotional, the realm of the moon traditionally in astrology, right? And then when you have this fire energy to come in there, we can talking about stirring up passions, but it can also just be about the way in which it's almost like our engine's revved up and we're ready to go, we're ready to do something. But this can also mean that we feel like we're stuck. It's like, yeah, I'm ready to move ahead, but I can't get, you know, I can't move, or the car is started, but now it's stuck in traffic. You know, it's like you're aware of the intensity of something. And the way that this can also manifest itself is as frustration. You will see this with men. I find this is interesting when Again, this is an extreme example of it. It's not necessarily the default behavior here, but sometimes you will see men who will talk to women, and then if a woman just, if they come on very strong to a woman, and the woman is just like, yeah, no, then they get very angry, right? There can be a lot of anger that can come out, like this is what I want, and you're supposed to give it to me. That's another attitude that needs to go away in this coming society. I'm angry because somehow, like, the fact that you're rejecting me, you're saying that I'm unworthy, and yeah, people can feel that way when that situation occurs. But again, there's a whole lot here around being centered in yourself. We have the Queen of Rainbows here, the flowering card. Okay, so this is about you flowering into who you are, male or female, doesn't matter. This is about flowering. This is about security. Queen of Pentacles is the one who is secure in themselves and can share. And I think what it's saying is that, okay, the way we need to look at it is it's not so much that we don't need, or even if, okay, maybe need is the wrong word. We should be with people because we want to, not because we need them or are codependent on them, right? But rather because, we enjoy being with that person, and that person, you support each other, right? That's kind of the ideal. I realize it doesn't always happen that way, because there's always going to be things to be negotiated that are not, one person wants something one way and the other person wants something a different way. But ultimately, it's about making sure that you are flowering in the midst of this. And also, I think it's suggesting that one of the ways to connect with people is to simply be yourself, is to flower into the person who you are. A lot of times we're worried about creating facades, or, oh, I have to be this, or I have to weigh this much, or I have to look this way, or, I have to do my makeup this way, I have to wear these kinds of clothes. That stuff, that should have nothing to do with it, right? That should have nothing to do with these connections. You should be able to be who you are. And I think people will find that connection of all types comes very easily when you are just yourself. And yeah, there's always going to be people out there who are going to be like, oh, I don't approve of this, or I don't like this. Well, you know what? Then they don't approve of it and don't like it. It doesn't matter. The game goes on, the world goes on, not everybody, that's the other thing too. Not everybody is going to approve of us or what we're doing or who we are. And that's okay. Not everybody's going to. And the outcome here is our Five of Pentacles. And in this particular deck, this is called the Outsider card, right? You've got the little child there's the chained up gate, and he's looking at the little rainbows beyond. Now, if we remember the Page of Pentacles card, which is called the Adventure card, I don't know if that's readily available here for me to show you, but it makes me think about that. It's the way in which we feel that we are on the outside of the adventure, where that's like Chiron and Leo, like I'm missing out on something. Yeah, here it is. So if I compare these two cards, so here's the one we were looking at, and here's the Adventure card. Here's a little child going off into the forest, right? There's the little rainbows, and it's like they're going to go chase them. This is when we are setting out on a new path, right? When we have a new idea, when we're learning, when we want to set out and do something new. The Outsider suggests that we are cut off from that, okay? And the way in which we get cut off is feeling like we are an outsider. But the literal meaning of this card is this is a tape that's been played since childhood, from the first time, like I said, that you were rejected by somebody for any reason. It could be a little kid wanting to go play and people saying, no, we don't want to play with you. Whatever happens, this can set us up with something there where we feel angry at the outside world and we want to shut it out, and we distract ourselves with things like work to kind of shut that out. But we can also, or we can also just, just kind of become angry, or just try to live in a kind of outsider status too. That's something a lot of people will do. Like, well, I'm the person, I'm kind of the lone gun, and I'll never connect with anybody, like that kind of energy. And yeah, I mean, I think when people do blaze their own trail and try to do their own thing that's not part of the script, yeah, you will get like weird looks from people, or you may have people who are just kind of like, no to whatever it is that you're doing. But ultimately, it becomes about becoming secure in yourself, solidifying yourself. That's why I think it's kind of important to know who you are and know what it is that you're doing, that what is it that's authentic to you, and what do you do? I've said this before, out of a sense of duty. What is it about? Well, this is just the thing I have to do. I have to do this thing, yeah, this is not my style, like, but I have to be this way just because, I won't get this job if I don't do this. I won't, this person might not like me if I don't do this. This group may think I'm weird if I don't do this, or if I do that. Happiness comes from being really authentic. And as I've said to people, I've been doing some readings recently, and I said, when I hear people talk about something and I can see that they're really animated and excited, I'm like, yeah, that's where you are. That's where the real you is. That's what makes you happy. And that's where you need to be. And if other people tell you, oh, no, yes, but, I know, but you really should do this, and it would be more responsible of you to do that. And no, you be who you are. And if you do that, then you attract that abundance. The Queen of Pentacles is also about attracting that abundance. You attract to you the things that you need because you are living in your own truth. And so I think we're just talking about all of the things that keep us from connecting with others are the things that keep us away from our own truth. And we do recognize that we're not going to, our way of being in the world is not going to jive with everybody. But at the same time, being true to yourself is ultimately the way to be in the world. But you want to make sure you know what that is for you. And are there certain things that you get yourself involved in just because you want to actually block the world out? So I don't know, just some thoughts today. I hope these are interesting, helpful. Like I said, it was just the topic that kind of came up this morning as I was thinking about that story. And that story came up for a number of reasons. But anyway, I hope you all have a great Sunday. If you are in the Northeast, prepare for this week, this rather crazy week that we're going to be having, like weather-wise and so forth. But yeah. Oh, I'm going to mention I'm not going to do a live stream tomorrow morning because literally because of the weather. Because it's going to be we're going to be having like 60-mile-an-hour winds in the morning, and I have stuff I need to take care of in the morning to deal with all of that. And there's some of the things I have to deal with during the time of the live stream. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give myself a day off tomorrow. I also have a podcast I want to record tomorrow. So, so I hope you all have a great Sunday. I will be back again on Tuesday. And, enjoy your day. I'll see some of you later. And, take care.